and which Kuwaiti citizens have continued to enjoy since the establishment of the Constitution back in 1962. Good morning, Greem. Today is a great day to be a Kuwaiti, don't you agree?
Good morning, Yusuf, and good morning, everyone. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. We encourage everyone today to go out and vote and practice your constitutional rights. Today is the beginning for a new phase by taking a democratic step to a new parliament that expresses the will of the Kuwaiti people.
Hello again. First, let us go on a live stream to check out what it's like in the 5 constituencies after minutes of opening the ballot doors for the Kuwaiti people to exercise their right to vote. As we can see on these screens, together the schools in the 5 constituencies where Kuwaitis will soon fill up the halls to cast their vote for their chosen representatives. Today, Kuwaitis, men and women, will head to the polling stations around the country to cast their votes for the person they wish to represent them at the National Assembly. The English News and Political Programs Department has prepared a variety of reports highlighting the main event today taking place across Kuwait. Our team of reporters who are right now at the scene of each constituency following up on any developing news and transmitting the governmental efforts for the preparations to ease up the voting process. Let's start with the first report.
وأنه ترتيبا على كل ما تقدم واحتكاما للدستور ونزولا واحتراما للإرادة الشعبية، فقد قررنا حل مجلس الأمة 2020 المعاد بحكم المحكمة الدستورية حلا دستوريا استنادا للمادة 107 من الدستور والدعوة لانتخابات عامة في الأشهر القادمة. ونود أن نبين أن سبب حل مجلس الأمة 2020 هو الانتصار للإرادة الشعبية، مما يتطلب معه ضرورة العودة إليها في انتخابات جديدة، وسيواكب ذلك إصدار جملة من الإصلاحات السياسية والقانونية المستحقة لنقل الدولة إلى مرحلة جديدة من الانضباط والمرجعية.
The political leadership speech came as a victory for the nation's will, the source of all powers, and affirmed the right of the people to choose their representatives in the National Assembly, to start a new phase of construction and development, and to fill the aspirations of the Kuwaiti citizens for a better tomorrow. The country has lived through many years of severe political tension that hindered development and stood in the way of achieving plans and goals, which necessitated the rapid and wise intervention of the political leadership, which chose to return to the Kuwaiti people to say their word and correct the political path in order to enhance the national unity and maintain the country's stability and progress. An electoral right that citizens are looking forward to today and to its results with much hope and optimism to overcome the stumbling blocks of political and developmental work that held the country's progress in all fields, which puts a huge responsibility on the voters in choosing the right person and member to represent them in Abdullah Salim Hall for the good of the country, achieving its higher interests, advancing progress and development, and overcoming the previous practices, correcting the course, and immunizing it from impurities. Today, Kuwaitis head to the polls to choose their representatives in the National Assembly in compliance and response to the directives of the political leadership to correct the path, devote correct parliamentary practice, and avoid everything that would jeopardize the security of the homeland and forfeit its national and democratic gains.
Thank you for tuning in with us and to talk more about the latest updates on the 2023 parliamentary elections, which paves the way for the 17th legislative term of the National Assembly. We are now joined by our guest, the political analyst, Mr. Jassim Qabazard. Good morning, Mr. Jassim. Thank you for being with us here this morning.
Thank you very much.
May we start?
Yes, please go ahead. We're all excited.
Thank you. Mr. Jassim, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah's historic speech, as we all know, which was delivered on his behalf by His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Mish'al Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah. The speech stressed the need for the legislative and executive authorities to cooperate during the next stage. So what is required of them in this regard?
This particular issue of cooperation is a primary role of both parties, the legislative and the executive body, to do for this operation to function, for the country to move forward and proceed with their agendas. So it has happened that on previous occasions the National Assembly was dissolved for the reason of non-cooperation. So it is a primary point, a primary event, a primary, let's say, duty of both parties to do. So what His Highness is calling is to put this as a first item on their agenda.
True. Mr. Jassim, people are the source of power, as we all know. And sharing power are two of Kuwaiti's constitution's main themes. Can you please tell us more about these two concepts?
Yes, obviously. I mean, the Constitution of Kuwait does state very clearly that the people are actually the country. The people represent the country. And this is very, very true of all constitutions in the world, where the people have a great power to participate in the running of the country along with the executive body. So these two parties, actually, the concept of the people and the concept of legislation by itself cannot function without the executive body. So the government and the people have to work together so that the country can move forward in its agendas and all its programs. So it is primary for the people of Kuwait to always remember, and they do remember this particular issue, that the people are the power of the nation. With respect to the rules and regulations of the Constitution regarding the leadership, the political leaderships by His Highness the Emir and the Crown Prince, and by his representatives as the cabinet in the National Assembly, which is the government.
Mr. Jassim, what is the responsibility entrusted to the voter today?
Oh, the voters themselves are quite demanding, as a matter of fact. Their main goal is to have their representative win. Now, there are two things that have to be considered. Is what is the candidate himself supposed to do, and what do the voters expect? The voters usually think of their own personal problems. It's natural.
True.
So this is going to be a very big challenge for the voters themselves, hoping that whoever they are going to elect is going to do them personal service. Yet we have the MP, the winning MP, has to do more than that,
just to serve
the needs and wishes of the voters.
And why is voting in the elections a major responsibility?
Of course, it's a major responsibility, because that if the elections does not happen, the Constitution is not being implemented. The Constitution has more than 100 items in it and clauses, and many of them deal with the daily life of the country within itself and within its relationship with international and the regional environment. So it must be let's say, the driving force, the dynamo that keeps the country running.
Sir Jassim, we're going to take a look at this report and get back to more questions.
Yes.
Kuwaitis are heading to the polls in the 5 electoral constituencies to cast their votes and elect members of the National Assembly for the 17th legislative term of 2023. Men and women with the right to vote will be choosing 50 MPs from among 207 male and female candidates in a polling process that takes place according to the single electoral voting system. Let's watch this report and get back to you.
Kuwaiti eligible voters are heading to polling stations nationwide today in order to elect a new parliament, pinning high hopes that the country's aspired reforms and development will be momentous. As many as 793,646 eligible voters, involving 386,751 males and 406,895 females, are poised to pick 50 out of 207 candidates to represent them at the new legislature for a term of 4 years. Since 8 in the morning, vote centers have been open to receive the incoming surge of voters and will remain open for consecutive 12 hours until polling closes in 8 in the evening to begin the counting process. The fresh electoral race followed an order made in May to dissolve the former parliament, where another edict was then announced calling on voters to stand prepared to cast their ballots in a new electoral process slated for June 6th. Prior to Election Day, state bodies have been cooperating to ensure the success of the country's electoral race by putting all potential at the disposal of the voters. The Ministry of Information, for its part, had cordially invited 50 media representatives from all over the world to cover the parliamentary vote. Furthermore, the cabinet had recently tasked several non-government organizations to partake in observing the election process today out of commitment to ensuring a fair and transparent election.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get back to more questions with Mr. Jassim Qabizar. Mr. Jassim, I want to ask you, how would you describe the democratic experience here in the state of Kuwait?
If we go back to 1962, when was the Constitution was written in 1963, was the first National Assembly term. Until today, we're talking about something like 61, 62 years have gone by. Although it's shorter, it's comparatively speaking with other...
in what terms?
In terms of time.
Okay.
The time, the amount of, let's say, maturity and matureness of this whole parliamentary experience. It needs perhaps more time, but even though we're talking about a relatively small time, the whole experience went through a lot of historical turning points in the life of the development of Kuwait.
Correct.
Before that, Kuwait was administrative organizations. It wasn't a state. It wasn't a country that was part of the international community. So with the creation of the constitution, Kuwait turned from an emirate to a state. So therefore we had ministries and all the parts that, let's say, spring out of different ministries, and the country started to work on systematics.
Okay.
Now, it needed the National Assembly cooperation between the legislative, who put all the laws and bylaws, and also they hold the government accountable to their action, which is a very, very primary process. So Kuwait did actually experience going through this inquest process, istijwab, to hold the ministers accountable for their actions. And it did actually lead to dissolving, to annulling the National Assembly through going through proper technical procedures. So it did go through the, let's say, teething and developing and getting older and becoming more experienced in running this business. So I believe in this 60 years, Kuwait has actually developed quite a bit, and it did expand. It did show its presence in the regional area, the Gulf GCC, the GCC countries, and also in the international community and in the United Nations. And Kuwait has experienced a great deal of moderation in its policies, international policies. All this came about by the exercise of democracy in our country. And this did actually create a development of a systematic rapport between these two entities. So it is, let's say, it is a successful experience, and it has actually helped the country grow and develop.
Are we still in the teething process, or have we went beyond that?
Actually, it did come to the point where using the inquest process, where a prime minister was really removed from his office. And this is quite an achievement, being first a prime minister, secondly, being from the ruling family, from Al Sabah family. That indicates how both parties do respect the rules and regulations of diplomatic conduct.
So, from my understanding, we have matured enough and we are set and ready to go.
I believe so. I think we have a strong foundation of democratic process that we could continue on this and make ourselves present in the international community.
Mr. Jassim, what are the criteria that the voters should keep in mind, especially by choosing their representatives in the National Assembly elections? That we should remind them of as well.
This is very important, as a matter of fact. You know, the candidate must have, let's say, a clear outlook of what he has to do, and he has to feel the problems of the nation, problems of the people, whether it's personal or whether it's public. And he has to also have a view for which direction he likes to see our country going. He must think first of the national interest of Kuwait.
Correct.
There are issues which are very hot in the market, mainly is pay raise. There is loans, problems of loans, problem of environmental effects in Kuwait, problems of economical of the country, development, infrastructure, food security, general security of Kuwait itself, around the turmoil that happens in the region, and maintaining also the humanitarian aspect of Kuwait's involvement, whether in the Gulf region or in the world. So these are issues and points which I think all candidates have to have in their agenda. And many of them also have some particular cases which has to do with the rights of women, increasing the rights of women, unemployment, serving the problem of unemployment, increasing the involvement of the Kuwaiti nationals in the ongoing business of Kuwait. No doubt we have to depend on expats, but they have to deal with this matter in a very humanitarian way, in a very logical way, because the amount of, or the percentage of the expats in Kuwait are quite high. On the other side, the unemployment is also high of the Kuwaitis. There has to be a way to improve this balance. Yes.
Sure. Mr. Jassim, in your opinion, what are the factors that influence the choice of voters currently?
If we look at academians, they look at the high standards of performance of the candidate in many terms. But if you look at their personal choice, their personal wishes and whims, primarily has to do with cost of living, housing, They need their houses. They don't need to wait so long to get their homes. The infrastructure, with their cars, their vehicles are being affected by very deteriorating surface of the asphalt in Kuwait and pavement. Not to say that there are not enough roads, there are plenty of roads, but the quality is quite poor at this time. And no doubt they like to feel that the Kuwaiti national, is more freedom in his action and his speech, because there are some rules and regulations which pretty much control, let's say, more than what they expect. So they want to feel more free in their expression. The social media has become part of the life of the voter. He likes to feel more free using the social media, hoping that if the exercising the democracy is more, let's say, open for him. And that also brings us to the point that the voter sometimes he goes beyond what is his rights. And,
how so?
And that's, for instance, he says, I'm free, this is my right, this is the free country, and he actually imposes on somebody else's freedom.
Which is not fair to
Not fair,
others.
exactly. So this awareness is something which I think that the voters maybe overlook. They get too excited about their wishes, but they have to realize that they cannot continue asking for more without being fair to the other side.
Could the term freedom be misused by voters, in your opinion?
Yes, to a certain degree it is misused, and maybe partly not because he doesn't know. He knows this, sometimes he's going overboard, but the rules and regulations of controlling him and not allowing him by law is not implemented enough.
Okay.
We always say, please implement the law, on me, on others also.
Of course.
And this is a very primary issue which needs to be addressed by the government and by the authorities.
Mr. Jassim, we have the following report that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to get back to more questions.
Okay.
Viewers, let's take a look at this quick report, and we'll get back with more questions to Mr. Jassim.
The noticeable efforts exerted by the government departments, namely the Ministries of Interior and Education, in addition to the municipality, for participating in the preparations for the elections. The Ministry of Justice, in coordination with other government departments, have formed 759 electoral commissions for today's National Assembly elections. These commissions will be stationed at 118 schools throughout Kuwait. Up to 1,157 judges and prosecution attorneys would partake in this process. On the other hand, Kuwait Municipality adopted an interrogated plan to organize and facilitate the voting process in cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and other bodies concerned with elections to highlight the country's democratic practices in its finest depiction. The Ministry of Health also completed the necessary preparations to keep pace with the legislative elections today by equipping medical clinics in all electoral committees in the 5 constituencies and providing them with emergency medical technicians and ambulances. The Ministry of Health has prepared medical clinics in 125 polling stations and 30 ambulances. The ministry also deployed 700 emergency technicians in the field at the monitoring and support sites. In addition to the preparation of an operating room equipped with all means of communication. Kuwait Fire Force took all necessary measures and precautions for the National Assembly elections in cooperation with all concerned authorities in the state.
During the election day and prior to it in 24 hours, as we mentioned, we're going to be having 36 checkpoints in the ballots, in the major ballot areas. The firefighter sector along with the prevention sector, we're going to be coordinating between this. We're going to be having a field checkpoints as well. As I mentioned, our objective is to support the government entities for the success of the elections.
Kuwait Red Crescent Society has recruited 150 volunteers to support the state's various entities in organizing the 2023 National Assembly elections.
So all the volunteers, they will be there at their schools before actually they start the election, because we have to be prepare all the strategic planning. And we actually going to be there all day long until they close the schools, because we want to be sure that we will provide all the services for all people.
The volunteers would be tasked to providing first aid medical assistance during the election in coordination with the Ministry of Health, in addition to assisting senior voters in the journey to cast their votes. The Ministry of Information is on full swing to broadcast the democratic process through the latest technology to meet the expectations of the public in terms of professionalism, objectivity, and impartiality in keeping with the noble values of Kuwait's democracy. The ministry has also developed a strategy to cement the national unity and serve the society based on transparency and professionalism.
And now let's move to the other side of the studio with my colleague Reem to take a quick tour on our correspondents in the 5 constituencies.
Thank you, Yusuf. Hello again, dear viewers. Now let's touch base with our correspondents who have been stationed early this morning at the different ballot stations around the country. Let us first check in with the 1st constituency with our correspondent Hadil Fahad. Good morning, Hadil. Tell us about the turnout in the early hours of voting in your constituency.
Yes, good morning, Garim. The school gates opened their doors for the Kuwaiti voters who will choose their representative in Abdullah Salim Hall, the National Assembly 2023. The voting process, which takes place according to the one voter system, started from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. After that, they were going to announce and the end of voting process and the beginning of counting, followed by the announcement of the official result. In this National Assembly, 207 candidates applied for the elections, including 15 female for the National Assembly elections 2023. Kuwaitis will choose 50 members to represent them in the parliament. In my district, the 5th one, where I am, there will be 34 candidates, 32 male and 2 female. The number of eligible voters, they are 100.110. When we talk about women participate in parliament, it shows that the Kuwaiti political leadership is giving priority to women's rights and empowerment, and is interested in boosting women's important role in development in line with the Kuwaiti Vision 2035. Let's talk about, let's say that because that Kuwaiti women play an important role in the society and they have made significant contributions to various fields in the country. In recent years, Kuwaiti women have gained more opportunities to participate in political and in the other sectors of society. Here in my school, I can see all the state institutions are working hard for the success of this process in order to provide the most suitable atmosphere for voters to perform their national duty to the fullest. We can see the Ministry of Information provided its full effort for the National Assembly 2023. Also, Kuwait Municipality adopted an integrated plan to organize and facilitate the voting process in cooperation, of course, with the Ministry of Interior and other bodies. Also, we can see many sectors, Ministry of Health, the medical staff, Kuwait Fire Force, also developing a plan to secure polling stations, including the distribution of many firefighting points equipped with a rapid intervention mechanism, in addition to distributing force from the prevention and the control sector. We will not forget also Kuwait Red Crescent Society always plays an important role in this process. 150 volunteers participate in Kuwait's celebration of democracy via providing assistance during the elections, and they would of course work closely with other state entities to make sure that the election would run smooth. Yes, Reem.
Thank you, Hadil. Now let's move to the second constituency with our correspondent Fatma Al-Gallaf. Good morning, Fatma. Tell us about the turnout in the second constituency.
Yes, hi Reem. I am here at the Aqla Al-Azdiya High School for men voters, and so far we have almost 500 voters. Actually, the voters have been waiting at the doors before the ballot opens at 8 a.m., which shows eagerness and excitement to practice their right of democracy. Also, we see here all the governmental bodies of civil defense volunteers helping the disabled, the elderly, and everyone who needs guide to vote. Also, we can see the medical teams also ready for any emergencies. The Ministry of Information dedicated all its capacity to ensure a transparent elections, as long as with the judges of the Ministry of Justice supervising the whole electoral process, procedure, and also to announcing final results with the cooperation with the Ministry of Information. Also, I can see a presence of security operatives here supervising and ensuring safety of everyone. The flow is going smoothly and in orderly flow. Everyone is like voting takes only less than 10 minutes. I can see people coming in and out, and it's really a ceremonial democratic event here at Kuwait. And that's it for now. Thank you, Reem. Back to you.
Thank you, Fatma. Moving on to the third constituency with Fatma Al-Hajri. Good morning, Fatma. How's the turnout at your constituency?
Good morning, Reem. As you can see, the turnout is still low. I think because it's still early in the morning. As you can see, the Ministry of Information, Ministry of Health, as well as Ministry of Interior, Red Crescent Society, and Kuwait Municipality are really exerting great efforts to cover today's election. Today is also a holiday for all Kuwaiti citizens in governmental areas, so everyone could cast their votes at ease. As you can see right here behind me, the people are really showing up and they're casting their votes and practicing their rights as Kuwaiti citizens. We're really happy to see everyone here practicing their national duties.
Can you tell us about the governmental bodies' preparations in your schools?
Of course, the Ministry of Health has provided 23 clinics across all governmental areas to cover this election, also with EMTs available. There's also clinics here. There's 30 ambulances provided on the governmental areas at all polling stations, depending on the population density. As you can see, the judges, advisors, Ministry of Justice, as well as the security operative from the Ministry of Information and Security from the Justice. Of course, the Ministry of Information has great efforts to cover the election today. As you can see, the camera crews are very busy all around the state of Kuwait.
Thank you, Fatma. Now we move to our fourth constituency with our correspondent, Mariam Ludwahi. Mariam, can you tell us about the early turnout at your school?
Good morning. morning, Kuwait. The turnout here in the 4th constituency is active, relatively, and thanks to the moderate and stable weather conditions that helped for the turnout to be active in the early hours. In the 4th constituency, we have 2 governorates, Al Farwaniya and Al Jahra, with 208,000 with 740 adult suffrages divided into 201 polling stations all over the 2 governorates to vote for 47 candidates and choose only 10. The surrounding of the polling station here at Al Bara Elementary School, this is a committee designated for men only. Too many committees. We have also the Ministry of Interior just secured the surrounding area and provided all necessary means and tools to facilitate the day. We have also the Ministry of Health. Thanks to them, they provided everyone here with masks and sanitizers. We have medical emergency. We have also, as you can see behind me, the Ministry of Justice with their consultants and judges to supervise the integrity of the electoral process. Back to you.
Thank you, Maryam. And last but certainly not least, our correspondent Bashar Mohammed in the 5th constituency. Good morning, Bashar. Can you give us the update, please?
Good morning, Reem. I'm in Ayoub Hussein Al Ayoub High School in Sabah Al Ahmed, and where the turnout is especially good. We have a lot of people turning up early. It looks like they're trying to beat the heat, so to speak. And I must say it's a wonderful day for democracy in the great state of Kuwait, where we have 10 seats available up for grabs in the assembly. And we have medical staff and Ministry of Interior crews all around in all locations here in the 5th constituency. Now back to you, Reem.
Thank you, Bashar. Thank you to all our correspondents for this key update on all 5 constituencies. And now back to you, Yusuf.
Thank you, Reem. That was very informative, and we're going to get back to more questions, dear viewers, with our special guest, Mr. Jassim Qabizard. Mr. Jassim.
Yes, please.
My next question to you is going to be about the new legislative term for the National Assembly opening. What can be expected of this new stage in Kuwait's political history?
Looking back at the events that happened to the National Assembly itself, where it was dissolved, it was nullified due to technicalities and due to the court orders coming from the Supreme Court. This in itself indicates a vitality into running the country. No human being is free from making mistakes or committing some kind of a foul event unintentionally. So I believe this process itself causes the country to be more mature in its political and systematic, running of the country. What is expected with this particular election this time is to overcome all the, let's say, the drawbacks of what the country went through. So there are very high expectations on many fronts. You're talking about development primarily, upgrading the quality of service of the government, increasing the participation of the Kuwaiti factor in developing the country, encouraging small projects and medium-sized projects, encouraging the growth of the economy, and most likely try to find other means of income for the country rather depending 90% or 95% on oil supply. Perhaps going towards creating oil byproducts rather than selling crude oil, but maybe you can sell the byproducts of the oil. I think dependence on oil and gas is going to continue for generations. It's not something that you can overlook or bypass, but it's how you can maximize its use, how you can capitalize on this wealth in a better way to develop your country, develop the know-how of the country, develop the growth of the minds of the academians, of education, you name it. So there are very high expectations.
So instead of relying on one source, we can maximize on many others.
No doubt, you can. It doesn't have to be felt anything. It could be services. Kuwaitis are very hardworking, very intelligent people. They've proven this to themselves during the growth of life of Kuwait, where Kuwait started before oil. It started just from simple trade, and it was one of the pioneering countries in the Gulf region. So the adventurous spirit of the Kuwaitis needs to be nurtured, needs to be strengthened, needs to be supported, and they will produce. We have examples of Kuwaiti professionals, you know, making very, very strong presence on an international scale, whether it's in economy, whether it's going to be in science, or it's going to be in space.
Or sports as well.
Or sports, yes, sports, you're talking about health. So I believe the potential is there. So what we need is the support and push.
So the potential of the Kuwaitis is known worldwide and in many fields, as you all know.
Yes, small country as we are, but we are very present internationally.
Sir Jassim.
Yes.
What are the most important files that will face the next parliament?
For important files, I would say education,
okay,
housing,
okay,
infrastructure, development of the infrastructure, upgrading the infrastructure, meaning primarily not only roads, but you're talking what's underneath the road, electrical, water, you know, communications. These to be also increased because the demand of the people is part of it. And then you have the environmental impacts and what's happening to our world in terms of food, affected by the desert, affected by the climate, and affected by the sea, pollution of this kind. I think maybe supply of fresh potable water is going to be a prime issue that Kuwait has to address, because it's getting more scarce, and the source of water is coming out from the sea, and the sea is getting more polluted. Therefore, so there has to be some, let's say, plan B to be applied to cater for any emergency of this kind. Plus, we like to increase the mass movement of people using trains and subways and so forth. And I believe that's coming, but it's moving a bit slowly. I believe this is going to be an addressed issue. For
so is it going to be one of the important files that is going to be discussed, as we've all witnessed the construction works that has been undergoing in the past few months throughout the Kuwaiti roads?
Yes.
Is that incorporated for the train system
yes.
towards that? So it's going to be on one of the main files?
Yes, Kuwait has always been a developing country.
True.
Development not only in terms of, let's say, urbanization, that's increasing its size, going horizontally and vertically, but it needs to develop this services so that it becomes more productive. How? By providing access between the public, going from one place to other in a short time, and not get stuck in traffic jams and problems of the road.
Focus on work instead of traffic.
Exactly. So you need to upgrade the quality of control of the traffic in Kuwait in any way that we can.
True. So Jassim, I can't stop asking you questions, but I have to take this report and we're going to enjoy it together.
Thank you.
Kuwait civil society and non-governmental organizations have always been playing a significant role in serving the society, addressing its problems and monitoring political events and public activities, including election observation. The cabinet has recently asked several NGOs to partake in watching the country's forthcoming parliamentary elections due on June the 6th out of its commitment to ensuring fair and transparent elections. Here's more in the following report.
The civil society and the non-government organizations in the country play an important role in serving the community, raising awareness and addressing its issues. It is a major partner in monitoring and interacting with political events and public events, especially following up and monitoring the parliamentary elections based on its national role to ensure its integrity according to the highest standards of transparency. And in pursuit of the Council of Ministers to achieve the highest standards of transparency and support for the role and partnership of civil society organizations in the democratic process. The government assigned a number of civil society organizations to participate in supervising the procedures and follow-up of the National Assembly elections process today, which reflects the importance of the national role of civil society institutions and the importance of their involvement in the process. The Council of Ministers' decision to assign the civil society organizations to monitor the parliamentary elections is positive and indicates the state's confidence in the national parties. It also takes into account the participation of relevant and specialized civil societies in following up the electoral process to encourage them to fully play their national role, which is one of the most effective tools and means in monitoring the parliamentary elections since the mid-60s until this day. The decision also contributes to support civil society institutions in terms of awareness and reflects the importance of delivering a message to male and female voters to participate in the electoral process and in creating a better future for the state's reality through the optimal selection of the representatives in the National Assembly. The main objectives of monitoring and follow-up the electoral process by civil society institutions is not only to ensure the impartiality and integrity of the concerned parties in managing the electoral scene or in pushing voters to participate in the electoral process, but also to assess the democratic situation and to promote the state of Kuwait in the relevant international indicators. The role of the civil society organizations is to submit reports to the concerned authorities on any observations in the conduct of the electoral process, and there are unique work mechanisms by these institutions to monitor the electoral process in its various stages and issue comprehensive reports that include all measures taken and what was monitored in the process with complete impartiality.
Welcome back. I hope you have enjoyed this report that we've seen together. We're going to get back to more questions and answers with Mr. Jassim Qabizard. Mr. Jassim.
Yes, please.
Are you ready?
Yes.
The following question. How do you describe the current elections and what do the signs indicate?
This particular election is of high caliber of expectation. Okay, so
especially this year.
Especially this year, and after a stagnation, actually, of activity, you know, in this last almost year, nothing much happened. The two governments came, two governments disappeared, and National Assembly got dissolved twice. So, but what does it mean? What it reflects is a stagnation of activity in the country, because when the government activates itself, projects start. You know, money is spent, and you get the whole cycle of economy turning. So it is expected that with this particular election, that this, let's say, locomotive has to start moving again. In Kuwait, we always are used to activity and production. So we want this part to actually be activated. Plus, there are high expectations of issue that has to do with law enforcement, have to do with upgrading the productivity of the country in totality.
In many terms.
Yes, you're talking about you know, the effect of, let's say, education. You have so many private universities.
Which is the main focus that should be, because
exactly.
Dealing with education, it's dealing with the future by itself.
Yes, you have, Kuwait has a very high percentage of young generation, who are, you know, about 62%, male and female, and male and female, are pretty much equal in,
Sure.
in numbers. They all need their livelihood to be active and productive. They have vision, they have ambitions, they have needs, they have requirements, they have to live a good life. Kuwait is a rich country. God gave us this richness, alhamdulillah. So it has to be utilized in its best form. So the expectation from that respect is quite high. Plus, that the government itself has to move, because the government cannot move on its own. It's not a one-sided situation. The legislative party has to contribute so that the government can also do what it's supposed to do.
Both of them have to work together. It takes two
Exactly.
to tango. Mr. Jassim, as we back to the education, before I ask you, I want to ask you, what are the voters expecting by the end of the day today? We already asked you this question earlier, but as we all know that we might have new viewers who just tuned in,
Yes.
we would like to clarify that question and again, and then we'll get back to the education.
I would say the voter is thinking of his personal need primarily, because he wants this particular candidate to win, because he promised him that he wants to resolve his problems.
But has this changed
No.
in this current generation? Are people more aware that voting is not just a right for yourself, and it's a right for everyone, and freedom should be utilized in the proper manner?
That should be the driving force. Should be the driving
Well, we're
force.
hoping for that.
We're hoping for
hopefully
that
this year.
And I do believe that most candidates in their speeches and their whatever they tell their voters is in that direction.
True.
He cannot speak just for about himself and his particular constituency. But if the particular constituency, for instance, has a particular problem of which is, then he does address that. But it's all going towards the betterment of running the country and whatever it needs to move on, you know, according to the laws, the bylaws, and to be productive and to be a positive in their efforts. So most likely the voters, you have both types. You have those voters who have high expectations of the candidates. So they're most likely they will direct their vote to the qualifications
True.
of that particular candidate.
So people are more aware and they are heading in the right path and direction, hopefully.
Definitely.
Mr. Jassim.
Yes.
Earlier we spoke before we get on air, and I was intrigued by your answer, and I would like to share it with our dear viewers. Let's talk more about this year's slogan, which is correcting the path, as it's shown on the screen.
That's exactly a very, very important actually theme, because this was stressed by His Highness the Emir and Crown Prince. So that means that as a ruler has noticed that this nation has, let's say, digressed from what is right, digressed from what is supposed to be doing. So that's why the term correction comes. So something wrong has happened. I believe in many formats, the term correction means, first of all, going about fighting corruption. Unfortunately, corruption is not only for Kuwait. There's the whole world. We see every day high politicians, high people worldwide are involved in corruption, and laws are applied. So I believe correction means implementing of the laws, most probably, which is a good sign. And we have seen already some examples done by the Ministry of Commerce, by the Ministry of Oil, by the Ministry of Interior, and the Kuwait municipality, which deal with the masses, which deal with the public. And this is a very good sign, and I think it continues and will be strengthened. The other thing is correcting the path of the relationship between the two bodies, the legislative body and the executive body. This needs a better outlook, needs a better cooperation environment so that they both can work together. It's part of correction. It's very important to address this and to create the healthy environment for these two parties to work together. And if you want to go, for instance, we have education problems. Okay, we have education in the addressing the environment, about dealing with the environment of Kuwait. Human beings naturally are destructive people. They like to, selfish people. They like to have their own particular, wishes for themselves, and they overlook the rights of the country that needs to be protected. So there's a lot of ways that you could, let's say, enlighten the public, enforce some of the laws and legal aspects of maintaining stability, cleanliness, safety, avoid vandalism, violence, any kind of things that are damaging to the country. This is another venue of correction. Plus, that we're talking about Kuwait being involved with the international community. And we have to have our international policies.
True.
Working alongside with the neighboring countries, because you cannot work on your own. So you're talking about proper international communication, international representation.
Which we've always been on top of that since many years ago.
Since many years, and Kuwait is known for being a very moderate country for this.
So as from my understanding, this slogan for this year is very heavy and shouldn't be taken for granted. And this slogan is meant to protect the people and everyone living here on this, on our homeland.
And I think the public that are voting today and the candidates must put this particular slogan
in their mind
and
move forward for the best for every Kuwaiti citizen and everyone who's living in this country.
Inshallah.
Mr. Jassim, before we end here, I'd like to ask you lastly, what are your final remarks that you would like to share with us today?
I want everybody to vote, really. Every vote counts. Every vote has its value, and nobody should think lightly of the value of his votes and not think that he's only one person. No, himself and everybody else will all add up, and the more they participate, the better for the country, and the more they will contribute for the safety of the future of the nation.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Jassim, today and giving us your time. We've sure enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Kuwaiti women have come a long way in terms of political representation in the National Assembly. Kuwait attaches great importance to the roles of women in the development of the community away from any racial, gender, religious, or linguistic discriminations. Kuwait spared no effort to empower women, ensure their rights, ensure their effective participation in all aspects of daily life, and enable them to assume leading state posts, enjoy full access to state jobs on equal footing with men. Let's take a look at this report together.